Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm diving deep into testing coach mode in both college football and Madden. I wanted to see how the CPU handles different play calls, how ratings and abilities affect performance, and what really matters when it comes to winning games in coach mode. If you're curious about how to get the most out of coach mode, or just wondering how the CPU behaves compared to playing manually, stick around because I've got a lot to cover. Let's jump in. So first, let's start with the basics. What is coach mode? Coach mode is a feature in sports video games like college football and Madden where you take on the role of a coach rather than controlling the players on the field directly. That means you focus on calling plays, making substitutions, and adjusting strategies, while the CPU actually runs the plays, makes the decisions on the field. It's a way to experience the game from a different perspective. That's all about strategy rather than stick skills. If you've ever wanted to test your football IQ or just sit back and see how your playbook works out, coach mode is a great way to do that. Now, let's talk about the difference between CPU versus CPU auto-simulated matches and using coach mode where you control one side of the ball. In a fully simulated CPU versus CPU match, you set up the game and let the CPU handle everything from start to finish. The game basically plays itself with no human input at all. This is often used to simulate seasons quickly, or see how teams match up without getting involved. But when you use coach mode and choose one side of the ball offense or defense, you can still have an influence on the game by selecting the plays. The CPU then runs the plays you call. This means you get to test different strategies, experiment with certain play calls, and see how the CPU executes your game plan. It's a way to blend automation with your own strategic input, giving you more control over the flow of the game without actually controlling the players themselves. So why did I decide to test coach mode? Well, I was curious about how effective different play calls are when left up to the CPU. I also wanted to know whether ratings and abilities like having a high-rated quarterback or star wide receivers actually make a difference in coach mode. I wanted to see if the CPU would make the same decisions that I would make in real-time gameplay. For example, would the CPU throw to the open receiver? Would it make the right read on defense? Would ratings matter at all? Or is it just about the plays you call? Here's how I set up my test. First, I ran a game in both college football and Madden, where I used my go-to meta plays, the ones I always use when I want to get easy yards or touchdowns. These are usually high percentage plays that are tough for the defense to stop. I called these plays in coach mode and watched to see how the CPU executed them. Would it make the same reads as I would? Would it throw to the right receiver at the right time? Would it hit the check down or take the deep shot when appropriate? And guess what? The CPU actually executed these plays almost exactly like I would have. It made the same reads, hit the same receivers, and even adjusted to the defense pretty well. That was really interesting to see, because it means the CPU is actually pretty good at running well-designed play 7 without player input. So you've seen the results here as I started a fresh dynasty with me as a head coach. Now in this game, I pick the plays on both ends and see how the CPU will play, just as if I was playing online, and it played exactly how I would. Now I done the same concept in the next match, but instead of picking the play on defense, I just focused on the offensive side of the ball and let the defense auto-sim. But I did watch how the defensive side play. Doing it this way created a better dynamic of play between the CPU. Just because the CPU does random play calls on defense, it made for better random outcome rather than me picking the same play over and over that will stop the AI easily. Now the next match, I took the same approach but focused on another test. Also, before we get to that, just showing my recruiting here as I was able to find 7 hidden gems. But anyways, I didn't stop there. I wanted to know what would happen if the quarterback was terrible. So I picked the team with the worst rated quarterback in the game, someone with a low overall rating, terrible throwing accuracy, and low awareness, and that was David Lynch from Pittsburgh Panthers. As you can see, he's a 51 overall with no abilities compared to the starter, who is Eli Holston. I ran the same plays as I did with Hawaii. Guess what? The CPU still made the same reads and threw to the same receivers just like before. The outcome was almost identical. The bad quarterback didn't make any noticeably worse decisions than the good quarterback did. The CPU just ran the plays as if the ratings didn't matter. That was a big eye-opener. It showed that in coach mode, the CPU's decision-making doesn't really depend on how good or bad the quarterback is. The CPU just looks at the play call and executes it according to its programming. I didn't want to limit this test to just 1 year of each game, so I ran these same tests across different versions of both college football and Madden. No matter which year I played, the results were the same. Player ratings and superstar abilities didn't seem to have much of an impact on the CPU's execution. It didn't matter whether I had a top-rated quarterback or a bench warmer. The CPU ran the same plays in the same way and got the same results. That means that in coach mode, the game's logic doesn't really account for player quality when it comes to decision making. Instead, the CPU just focuses on the play call itself. So what does this mean for strategy in coach mode? Well, it means that the most important thing you can do is pick plays that the CPU can run effectively. For example, in Madden, if I called a play with double drags, the CPU would throw underneath all game long, hitting those short routes over and over again, which you will see highlights of later on as I use the Dallas Cowboys in Madden 20. The thing that I do feel that is a little odd with that version compared to Madden 18 is that it seemed that in Madden 20 the AI is kind of dumber for reaction. But in Madden 18 they just throw checkdowns, or to the flat more from what I tested so far. But in college football, if I picked a play to have my fastest wide receiver running a deep route, the CPU would look to throw the deep pass all game long. It didn't matter if the receiver was rated high or low, or if the quarterback was a star or a scrub. The CPU just ran the play as designed. So coach mode is really about finding those plays that work consistently, no matter who's on the field. At the end of the day, coach mode in both college football and in Madden comes down to one thing, and that's the plays that you call. From ratings, abilities, and overall team strength doesn't make a big difference when the CPU is making the decisions. If you call a good play, the CPU will run it well. If you call a bad play, the CPU will struggle, regardless of who's on the field. So if you're looking to dominate in coach mode, focus on finding high percentage plays that work well against the defense. Look for plays with simple reads, solid blocking, and good route combinations that can get your receivers open. Once you find those plays, you can control the game without ever touching the controller. So that's what I found out about coach mode in college football and Madden. It's all about the plays, not the players. If you want to win, focus on calling plays that the CPU can run well. Don't worry too much about ratings or abilities, because in coach mode, they don't seem to matter as much as we'd expect. It's kind of crazy to witness it like this. Just to how the CPU manages to play, I don't expect much out of the CPU. But I thought there would have been more to it on why certain outcomes happen. I really thought it would have been from ratings, and or abilities having a major factor on those outcomes as well. But to see that it's mostly on just the play itself or the outcomes, it goes to show that everything else just doesn't matter. Have any of you really noticed this at all when you play in coach mode? Also, what do you think is better to witness from having it? Fully random autosim with the CPU versus CPU randomly picking plays? Or do what I done and have a partial play in by just playing one side of the ball and just picking the play for the CPU to execute? It's like from my last video where a 1-3 team, who was San Diego State, they ended up upsetting my undefeated 4-0 Hawaii team. It makes you think if that was a scripted endgame result to happen. So let's talk about coach mode in Madden's franchise mode. Does practicing against your opponent's scheme actually help, even when you watch the game in AutoSim? The short answer, yes, it definitely helps. Here's why. When you prepare for a game in franchise mode, including coach mode, you can choose a weekly training focus. One option is to practice against your opponent's offensive or defensive scheme. This tailors your preparation to exploit or counter their tendencies. When you practice against your opponent's scheme, your team earns valuable boosts and XP gains. That means better performance on game day. You get position-specific upgrades like improved coverage, tackling, and blocking, all designed to counter your opponent's strengths. Even in AutoSim, the game uses these weekly boosts to influence key stats. Things like turnovers, big plays, and defensive stops. So, your team actually plays better than if you skip practice. For example, you can focus on defending the deep pass or countering the run depending on who you're facing. When you auto-sim the game in coach mode, the sim engine factors in your weekly preparation and boosts. It's not as impactful as controlling the game yourself, but it does make a difference. You'll see fewer turnovers, more key stops, and even a stronger offensive performance. So don't skip weekly prep. It really does matter. So the first match of highlights, that you seen here with the Cowboys against the Redskins. I auto-simmed the practice preparation. During the game, I just picked plays that I thought could beat the CPU defense easily. End result of it, I ended up losing. Now compared to the second match versus the Dolphins, I went through and done the practice preparation. I picked the plays that was focused on scheme and strategy play, based off the opponent's tendencies heading into the match. And that game, I had a better endgame result. So hopefully, they can implement this for College Football 26. I feel like this will help with better AI adapting on gameplay tendencies. Anyways, that will do it for my testing results on Coach Mode. Let me know your thoughts down below. Which option do you prefer the most between full auto sim or partial play-in? Until next time, I will see you all in the next one. I'm out. Peace.